Rex Ryan couldn't hold it in. The second Shedeur Sanders press conference mime routine hit the airwaves, Ryan lit up national television with the kind of furious, old-school rant that screams football boomer meltdown. The message was clear. This isn't how quarterbacks act. And yet, Pat McAfee, with a grin that said I live for this, called the whole thing a genius move. Top-tier trolling with a purpose.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
It all started with a question. Simple, standard, boring. Sanders, now the third-string quarterback for Cleveland Browns, was asked how he felt about Dillon Gabriel being promoted to starter. Instead of the soundbite, he gave silence. Literal silence. A full-on, deliberate mime performance. As if he walked out of a press conference and into performance art. It went viral instantly, turning a clipboard-holding backup into a social media phenomenon. Some fans saw it as confident and clever. Others, a career torpedo in real time. But this wasn't just content for content's sake. McAfee, who's no stranger to using the spotlight, praised it as a calculated jab at a system that undervalues personality. To him, Shedeur's antics weren't reckless. They were strategic. Meanwhile, Ken Dorsey tried to straddle the middle, saying what every coach thinks but won't say on camera. If the locker room's fine, it's fine. If it's not, it's a problem. And that's the tightrope. The NFL isn't Hollywood. You don't get extra credit for going viral, unless it helps the team win. Sanders, already under the microscope as Deion Sanders' son, carries legacy weight. But this isn't college anymore, and that family name only gets you so far. Especially when you're sitting behind Gabriel, whose steady, team-first response to being named starter was a masterclass in professionalism. It was textbook NFL. Safe, respectable, predictable. Contrast that with Sanders, who's clearly playing a different game. Not football only, but football plus. Build the brand. Own the moment. Keep your name circulating even when you're not taking snaps. It's disruptive, yes, but intentional. The question now is, will it work? Because the league has eyes. Executives, scouts, coaches, they all saw the mime bit. And depending on who you ask, it was either brilliant marketing or evidence that Sanders lacks the discipline to lead a team. Dorsey hinted that as long as the team culture holds, they'll ride it out. But the second it doesn't, that mime mask becomes a red flag. The real danger isn't the press conference. It's what happens next. If Sanders stays third string, these antics could backfire hard. But if he rises, or if a different team sees value in his presence, his brand, his edge, this could be the start of something much bigger than football. Or it could be the perfect case study in how going viral doesn't always mean you're winning. You don't often see a third-string quarterback become the most talked-about name in the NFL. But Shedeur Sanders has done just that, without throwing a single pass. It all started with a simple, silent press conference. After being asked about his role on the team and Dillon Gabriel being promoted to starter, Shedeur didn't give a soundbite. He didn't give a quote. He didn't even speak. What he did was mime. Zipped the lips, shrugged the shoulders, pantomime the door kind of mime. And in a league obsessed with message control, that silence was deafening. What followed was an immediate firestorm. Social media exploded. Clips of the moment spread across every platform. Some fans thought it was hilarious. Others called it arrogant. But everyone had a take. And when everyone is talking about you, it's not a meltdown. It's a media win. Pat McAfee saw it instantly. On his show, he called Shedeur's silent act a masterclass in trolling. He framed it not as a meltdown or tantrum, but a deliberate, media-savvy move. McAfee praised the boldness, the awareness, the strategy. Because in 2025, where every press conference is content, and every quote gets sliced into memes, going wordless was possibly the loudest statement Shedeur could have made. And it worked. Shedeur became the headline, not the starter, not the coach, not even the game, just one viral act. And now he's on every timeline in America, but not everyone saw brilliance. Rex Ryan, never one to hold back, went off. On national television, Rex called Shedeur immature, unserious, and flat out bad for the locker room. He didn't just criticize the mime act. He condemned it. For Rex, this wasn't creative. It was disruptive. Another example of young players not understanding the privilege of the league. It was a generational clash in real time. McAfee, the modern voice of sports media crossover, called it genius. Rex Ryan, the old-school coach, called it a liability. And that split is exactly where the NFL finds itself, torn between traditional values and a future where content creation is part of the job. Then came the Ken Dorsey take, the one that didn't scream or praise, but looked inward. Dorsey, with years of NFL locker room experience, said what really matters isn't what goes viral on Twitter. It's what happens inside the building. If the team is fine with it, if the quarterback room has no problem, then there's no issue. But if teammates start feeling like Shedeur's antics overshadow the work, then it becomes real. And that's the delicate line Shedeur is walking. Because while fans can enjoy the performance, coaches and teammates have to trust that the guy sitting next to them in film study is focused. That he's not turning the season into a personal brand campaign. That when he shows up, he's there for football, not followers. Which brings us to the real question. Is Shedeur building something long-term, or is he chasing short-term clout? Everything about the situation points to a calculated strategy. Shedeur Sanders isn't some backup trying to go viral out of desperation. He's the son of one of the most media-savvy athletes in sports history. He's grown up in cameras, press rooms, and headlines. His brand isn't an accident, it's a plan. And this latest move fits perfectly into a larger effort to stay relevant in a league that rarely gives third-string QBs a second look. And when your opportunities on the field are limited, relevance matters. Going viral can buy you more time. It can keep your name on the radar. It can remind GMs that you're not just a backup. You're a marketable backup. Which brings us back to the NFL's current identity crisis. This league is still rooted in a very specific culture. The quarterback is supposed to be the voice of reason, the face of the franchise, the guy who says we instead of me. And that model still works. For guys like Dillon Gabriel. Quiet, focused, coachable. Gabriel earned the starting job, and his response was everything the league loves. Humility, gratitude, a team-first mentality. Gabriel didn't go viral, but he earned respect. He followed the rules of the NFL's traditional path. And for that, coaches trust him. Players respect him. He's safe, but he's not memorable. And that's the trade-off the league is now forced to reckon with. Because while Gabriel plays a clean game, Shedeur owns the narrative. And it's that narrative, chaotic, divisive, unforgettable, that now drives headlines, views, and sometimes even roster decisions. Shedeur is part of a generation of players who understand that media is leverage, that attention can't be wasted, that every mic, every camera, every question is an opportunity. And if you're not using that attention, you're losing ground to someone who will. But there's a downside. NFL insiders know that not every coach is willing to deal with a player who draws controversy before he draws up plays. And even if your antics go viral, if they make decision-makers uncomfortable, that can stall your career before it ever starts. It's the risk Shedeur has accepted. He's betting that his brand, his presence, and his ability to create conversation will be more valuable than the occasional media misstep. He's playing a long game. Not for a backup role, but for a bigger future, either in football or around it. And it's not a bad bet, because even if Shedeur never becomes a starter, he's already outperformed the position in one key metric: influence. He's got people talking. He's got opinions flying. He's forced the league to ask itself what kind of players it wants, and what kind of stars it's willing to tolerate. That's why Pat McAfee went to bat for him, because McAfee sees what most traditional analysts miss. Shedeur is not trying to replace the starter. He's trying to rewrite the rules. And whether that works, that depends on what the NFL values more. Safe, silent contributors, or high-risk, high-reward personalities who change how the game is consumed. Either way, Shedeur isn't going back to being a faceless backup. That moment is over. He's now a symbol of everything the league's trying to figure out. Branding versus discipline. Expression versus expectation. Content versus culture. So now what? Now the league watches. Teams reevaluate. Players notice. Because if Shedeur pulls this off, If he stays on a roster, earns a shot, or finds success because of his brand, he won't be the last. He'll be the first. The first of a new era of quarterback. One that doesn't just throw touchdowns, but generates attention. One that's not just prepared for the game, but prepared for the camera. The kind of quarterback that makes headlines even when he says nothing at all. So drop your take in the comments. Is Shedeur Sanders blazing a new trail, or just play with fire? Is this the future of the NFL, or the beginning of a burnout? Hit that subscribe button if you're here for more viral chaos, sports meltdowns, and the ever-blurring line between content and competition. Because if Shedeur just changed the game, you're going to want a front row seat for what comes next. Shedeur Sanders didn't accidentally go viral. He didn't stumble into this headline. He engineered it. He knew exactly what would happen the moment. He chose mime over microphone. He understood the reaction it would pull from the media, the split it would cause among fans, and the absolute meltdown it would trigger in NFL traditionalists like Rex Ryan. And that is what makes this story so wild. Because this wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a moment of immaturity. It was a strategy. And it's working better than anyone expected. In an NFL culture that prides itself on structure, discipline, and quiet professionalism, Shedeur dropped a social grenade by saying nothing at all. And that silence, it spoke louder than any post-game quote. Let's walk through what actually happened. Dillon Gabriel is promoted to starting quarterback for the Browns. It's a moment that should belong to him. He earned it. He worked his way up, gave the humble press conference, and said everything the league loves to hear. Respect, readiness, gratitude. Then Shedeur walks in, not to congratulate Gabriel publicly, not to give a usual team-first soundbite, but to pantomime. In full silence, with exaggerated gestures, he mocked the question, sealed his lips, and walked away. Cue chaos. Within hours, clips flooded every corner of the internet. Sports pages, meme accounts, even non-sports outlets picked it up. Some people thought it was brilliant. Some called it disrespectful. Some thought it was hilarious. Others thought it was a disaster. But everyone had something to say, and for Shedeur, that's the goal. Because Shedeur is in a unique position. As a third-string quarterback, he doesn't get many chances to control the narrative. He's not throwing passes. He's not scoring touchdowns. But he can stay visible. And in the NFL, that could be everything. Third-string quarterbacks are usually invisible, faceless. Their job is to be ready, stay quiet, and avoid headlines unless absolutely necessary. But Shedeur isn't built like that. He wasn't raised like that. His father is Deion Sanders, arguably one of the most charismatic, media-savvy athletes to ever touch the field. And if anyone taught Shedeur how to control attention, it's prime time. So when Shedeur decided to mime his way through that press conference, he wasn't just creating content. He was creating leverage. The NFL hates this kind of move because it threatens the unspoken hierarchy. It says, I don't need the spotlight you give me. I'll make my own. And that shakes up the whole system. Rex Ryan didn't just take issue with the mime act. He raged. On air. Loudly. Passionately. He called it unprofessional, a distraction, bad for team morale. He warned that behavior like this could derail a career before it even starts. In Rex's world, a quarterback is supposed to lead, not meme. And yet, the more Rex shouted, the more Shedeur trended, which is what makes this so ironic. The criticism only amplifies a moment. The outrage fuels exposure. And that exposure, that's what keeps Shedeur relevant. Now, let's not pretend the risk isn't real. There's a fine line between being seen as smart and being seen as selfish, between building your brand and alienating your teammates. If Shedeur loses a locker room, or worse, never had it, that's when things get messy. Because quarterbacks don't just need arm strength, they need trust. That's where Ken Dorsey comes in. Dorsey's take is the most grounded of them all. He didn't jump to judgment. He didn't scream. He focused on the team. And his point was simple. If the locker room is cool with it, then it's not an issue. But if there's even one player who thinks Shedeur made about himself, then you've got a problem. And that's the core of the story. Team culture versus individual brand. Shedeur is testing that boundary. He's banking on the idea that the NFL is evolving. that the league is finally ready for quarterbacks who don't just throw spirals, but also dominate algorithms. He's betting that personal branding matters, maybe even more than old-school notions of humility and conformity. And he's not alone. More and more players are treating their careers like startups. Content creation, social media strategy, brand development, it's all part of the game now. And Shedeur is ahead of the curve. But here's where it gets dangerous. The NFL front office isn't built for this. Executives still care about optics. They want team-first personalities, controllable narratives, predictable behavior. When someone like Shedeur goes viral for all the wrong or right reasons, it puts pressure on GMs and coaches to make a choice. Value the player's media presence or see it as a liability. That's why this story matters more than just one player. Shedeur is a case study. If his approach works, if he stays on a roster, keeps the locker room, and maybe even earns snaps, then other players will follow. They'll realize that in the absence of playing time, there's still a way to matter. But if Shedeur gets iced out, if he's quietly demoted, cut, or labeled a distraction, then it sends a very different message. Play your role, stay silent, or get replaced. And that brings us back to Dillon Gabriel. He didn't say much. He didn't go viral, but he did get the job. And his steady, team-first approach stands in direct contrast to Shedeur's media maneuvering. That's the NFL's current identity crisis laid bare. 2 quarterbacks, 2 strategies, 2 completely different philosophies on what it takes to succeed. Gabriel is what the league wants. Shedeur is what the league can't avoid. And for now, both coexist on the same team, in the same quarterback room, with 2 entirely different spotlights. So what happens next? If Gabriel plays well and wins games, Shedeur's antics might fade into the background. But if Gabriel stumbles, if the offense struggles, the narrative swings back to Shedeur, and not just because of his family name or his potential, but because of his relevance. He'll be the guy who kept himself in the story when everyone else counted him out. That's the long game Shedeur's playing. He's not just trying to be a quarterback. He's trying to be a presence, a brand, a cultural figure in a league that's still adjusting to the idea that its players are more than stats. And that's why this story doesn't end with a press conference. It doesn't end with a meme or a segment on McAfee's show. It keeps evolving. Because Shedeur keeps showing that he understands something most backups never figure out. Visibility is power. He may be 3rd on the depth chart, but right now, he's number 1 in the headlines. And that's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. The second Shedeur Sanders walked out of that press conference without saying a single word, the NFL's grip on its carefully manicured media machine cracked. Not shattered, not exploded, but cracked just enough for everyone watching to notice. And now, everyone, from sports media to front offices to players in locker rooms, is holding their breath to see what happens next. Because Shedeur isn't just another young player trying to build a brand. He's someone who walked into the league already branded, already recognizable, already carrying the weight and the privilege of being the son of Deion Sanders. That legacy is both his armor and his burden, and he knows exactly how to use it, which is why this wasn't just a viral moment. It was a calculated disruption, a silent declaration that said, I don't need your narrative. I brought my own, and it's working. Not because everyone agrees with it. In fact, because they don't. Look at how quickly the NFL world split in response. On one side, you got Pat McAfee, arguably the most influential sports voice of the digital era, calling him my Mac genius. Not sarcastically, not ironically. He fully leaned in. McAfee recognized the performance for what it was, strategic chaos, a moment that demanded attention without begging for it. On the other side, Rex Ryan, red-faced and fuming, going off on national TV about how the act was embarrassing, tone-deaf, and harmful to team chemistry. In his world, quarterbacks don't joke during adversity. They don't draw headlines unless they've thrown for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they definitely don't mime their way through accountability. This divide isn't just about Shedeur. It's about control. One side wants to embrace a future where players shape their own stories. The other wants to drag things back to a past where athletes played ball and stayed quiet. But Shedeur didn't grow up in that past. He was raised in a household where being seen was part of the job, where sports weren't just about performance, but about presentation. His father built a career off flash, personality, and presence, all without ever losing credibility on the field. And now Shedeur is applying that same formula to a new generation, except the rules have changed. Now it's not just post-game interviews and magazine covers. Now it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and memes. Every moment can be monetized. Every clip can spark a trend. And the NFL, it's still trying to catch up. The real tension here isn't between Shedeur and his teammates. It's between Shedeur and the league's image of what a quarterback should be. Because for decades, quarterbacks were expected to be controlled, polished, slightly boring. Tom Brady made a career out of giving the same robotic answers for 2 decades, and the league loved it. Even now, someone like Dillon Gabriel is considered a safe choice because he fits that mold. Respectful, quiet, team-oriented. But Shedeur is not here to be safe. He's here to be seen. And in a league where exposure can lead to opportunities, on and off the field, why wouldn't he use every tool at his disposal? This is a paradox NFL teams are dealing with now. They want marketable players, but only within the bounds of control. They want stars, but only if they follow the script. And Shedeur, he just walked on stage and threw the script out the window. The question now is, can the system handle it? Or more specifically, will the system punish him for it? Because make no mistake, the NFL doesn't always punish you for what you do. It punishes you for what you represent. And Shedeur, in that one silent moment, represented change, disruption, a refusal to play along with the corporate pageantry of professional sports. If the Browns decide he's too risky, too attention-seeking, too much of a distraction, they won't say it publicly. They'll use words like fit and focus and football culture. But the message will be clear. Don't rock the boat unless you're already the captain. And yet, if Shedeur does find success, if he plays well, connects with teammates, and earns respect, it changes the rules. It tells every young athlete watching that you don't have to choose between authenticity and opportunity. That being yourself loudly and creatively doesn't automatically make you a liability. And that might be the most important part of this entire saga. Because win or lose, make the roster or not, Shedeur Sanders just opened the door to a new kind of quarterback. One who isn't afraid to be both competitor and creator. One who knows the game and the algorithm. One who won't just answer your question, but might ignore it entirely, then make you talk about it for weeks. The NFL is changing, whether it wants to or not. And this moment, this mime act, it wasn't just a joke. It was a line in the sand. So now we wait. We watch, and we see whether the league embraces the future or tries to silence it again. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did Shedeur go too far, or is he just ahead of his time? Should the league evolve, or draw the line before things spin out? Hit that subscribe button. If you're here for more sports drama, culture clashes, and the personalities that turn press conferences into viral battlefields. Because in the NFL of tomorrow, the real MVP might not be the one with the most yards. It might be the one with the most views.